story of how I put together my very first ever real estate deal for $6.25 million at the end of 2024. Welcome back to another video. Hope you guys have enjoyed the recent content that I put out there. Again, I really want to make this channel all about business, real estate, and just my journey to wherever I end up. I don't even know what that looks like yet, so I appreciate you guys following along. And in today's episode, I want to talk about how I put together my very first real estate deal for $6.25 million, having never done a real estate deal prior to that. Most of you know that I got into real estate at the age of 18. I always wanted to invest in real estate. Real estate's like my number one passion. I love business, but I love real estate. If I could build a business in anything, it'd be in real estate. It's just one of those things that despite all you hear, you don't need any money, you don't need to do whatever to buy real estate. It's not true. You need money, and at this stage in life, real estate's gotten so outrageously expensive that you have to find creative ways to put deals under contract. With a friend, looked at other multifamily properties that we could potentially buy. We're looking at 8-plexes, 10-plexes, whatever. And none of the deals just made any sense. I was excited, don't get me wrong, but from a numbers standpoint, it just didn't make any sense. I also had always known that you had to have like a relationship with banks to get certain benefits and things like that, loan rates. And my family has always owned and operated marinas. And what's great about marinas, for those of you who are unfamiliar, is it's kind of like a multifamily, but it's just very niche. And I grew up around that my entire life. And so it dawned on me one night. I was sitting there, I couldn't sleep. It was like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. And I'm like, I wonder if there are any marinas for sale in my area. First, I was like, I'm just gonna wait till morning. Well, I couldn't sleep, and so I'm like, screw it. I am going to check right now. So grabbed my computer, I looked up, and sure enough, there was one marina for sale here in the area, and it was listed at $6.7 million. All right, now that's a lot of money, especially for somebody who's never put a deal together. So I was like, $6.7 million. There's got to be a way, to do this. And sure enough, with somebody that I had known through commercial insurance, I built a relationship with this guy, but I had known that he had a track record for putting together real estate and for selling businesses. So I reached out to him one day and I said, hey, you want to meet? And so we met, and I said, there's this marina for sale and I am interested in figuring out a way to buy it. He's like, Max, I love the idea. I'll help you. So the asking again was $6.7 million. And one thing that this friend of mine constantly reiterated was, Max, there's always a way to put a deal together. Sometimes you just don't see it yet, but there's always a way, and it's just called creative financing. So what we did was we put the deal under contract for $6.25 million. All right, and through this, we had the seller carry $1,562,500. All right, so we had the seller finance this. That means the bank didn't have to finance this much of the deal. This is like the most basic creative finance strategy that you can implement. We had him do this at a 5.75% interest rate. And the beautiful thing here is it was a 5-year balloon, and the payments that we had to make to him, or that I had to make to him, was interest only. I say we because he did help me a lot, but you know what else I used to help me get this thing done? ChatGPT. I was constantly plugging in ChatGPT, like, all right, how can I, because the bank's got requirements, and so you're trying to fill the bank's requirements, meet them, while putting together a deal. So I was constantly just plugging away, and this is kind of like how I figured it out. So, at the time, 5.75% interest rate was really low. I think back then it was like almost 7%. 5-year balloon, and we only had to make interest-only payments. Now, what's beautiful about business and just being relationship-oriented is the guy that owned this marina has owned it since the 90s. And he had this thing on the market for like 2 years apparently, but couldn't sell it, didn't want to sell it. And what we found out is the guy, as much as he wanted to retire, he was in his 80s, right? As much as he wanted to retire and be done, he wanted to know that it was going to go to somebody that wasn't going to like screw with the tenants. It wasn't going to change everything drastically. They wanted somebody that was like local, somebody who wasn't some corporate, structure like. And I built a relationship with the seller, and that's largely why he was willing to accept those terms. So then the loan amount from the bank happened to be $4,062,500. Alright, that's the loan, and this was going to be a 10-year term. See, on marinas and mobile home parks, because the banks look at them very similarly, they don't do 30-year terms, they do 10-year terms. Now, the idea here is it was going to be a tight deal, but in a couple of years, interest rate was going to drop from whatever, 7% at the time, and we'd refinance the property, and it would refinance for another 10-year term. So you can just kind of keep pushing this 10-year term out. Now, earnest money is usually like 1%, but we got it down to $60,000 earnest money. And down payment, they wanted 1%, so this was going to be $625,000. This was the only money I had to come up with right here. That's the only money I had to come up with. Now, granted, this goes to that, but $625,000 was the only money I had to come up with. Now, my problem was I didn't have $625,000. Let me back up a little bit. When I found this deal, because my family's been in the marina business my whole life, I wanted to find a way that I could get into the business, family business, without being in the family business and dealing with all the politics that family businesses deal with. And I wanted to build my own legacy. And so when I put this deal together, I figured that I was going to get into it with an investor or two. But my idea was that down the road, I would buy out that investor, and so that I would own this thing outright. Well, so as time went on, and believe me, this was a long process. The deal still hasn't even closed yet, but it's about to. When I put this thing together, I ended up finding 4 investors to fund the deal. Now the problem was I didn't know all 4 investors. I only knew 2. I really knew one, but through the one, I knew of this other one. So I only knew 2 investors. And the problem for me was, out of the 4 investors, 2 of them or 3 of them were quite a bit older. And so they were talking about putting their shares into trusts for their kids. And to me, I don't know enough, right? At this stage, I don't know enough to get around everything, but I can tell you right now, the idea of getting involved with 4 investors and having to figure out a way to buy them out when it's stuck in shares and all this stuff, I'm like, you know what? This might just be a better deal to back out of and collect a finder's fee. And so that's exactly what I did. I backed out of the deal, and I collected a finder's fee for an undisclosed amount of money. Now, I know some of you are thinking, well, if it's not your deal, then why are you talking about this? I'm talking about it because I put together this deal. Yes, I had help, but I put it together. I negotiated with the banks. I negotiated with the seller. I found the investors, right? But most importantly, I honestly didn't even care to get a finder's fee. Most important to me was that I learned one way. Because like I said, there's many ways to do it. I learned one way to put together a real estate property. Now, what's crazy after this is just a couple months later, I ended up putting another property under contract. It fell through, but it put it under contract. I had never imagined that it would happen that quickly. And so now that I've done this, I am so hungry for another property. And when I do it, I want to do it to where there's not going to be 4 investors. There's going to be 1 or 2. And it's in a way where I could potentially buy them out. Because like I said, I'm not in a state in life where I have this kind of money right here to just invest in a property. And I'll tell you the other thing, I'm planning for the future, right? I don't know what that looks like. I don't know if it's going to be, starting my own commercial insurance agency. I don't know if it's going to be starting a real estate investing company. I know this for sure will eventually happen. I just don't know what I'm going to do in the meantime. So I'm kind of planning for the future. But yeah, at the end of the day, this is how I put together my very first property, having no real estate experience prior to just being a residential realtor. So thought this was really cool, super exciting, and I hope you guys learned something. Please let me know in the comments below what you liked about this. If you have any questions, please like, comment, subscribe, share, right? Follow me on Instagram, Max McCuddy, TikTok, Max McCuddy. But I appreciate all your guys' support, more videos along the way. Just let me know in the comments what you want to see more.